my younger sister studied public health, and I went to visit her when she was in school, and she said, David, come with me to my favorite lecture, see my favorite professor. And it was a super interesting lecture. The guy said that the holy grail in public health is to come up with some sort of maxim that goes viral, that changes people's behavior at a huge scale and makes society healthier. And he gave two examples that weren't directly connected to, I'll figure that out, don't worry about the screen, it's coming later. He gave two examples that were kind of fun, and they don't really seem to encourage healthy behavior, but one was some bartender at some random bar invented putting a lime in a Corona. It just like started at one bar, and then like that made Corona like the most popular beer brand worldwide, because this behavior spread and got people excited to drink Coronas. So he was just showing a small habit that spreads can have a huge effect on society. Okay, debatably huge effect, but at least on beer sales. And then another one was this belief in Japan that eating a Kit Kat before you take a test is lucky and can improve your performance on the test. It makes Japan like the #1 consumer by like 10x of Kit Kat worldwide, and they have like 30 flavors. It's crazy. Like wasabi.
Wait, what?
Yes.
Yeah, wasabi Kit Kats. And, so I thought that was very poignant. It's just an interesting strategy to try to improve health outcomes on a massive scale, is to try to create some behavior that just catches on and people like doing it and makes them healthier. So in a similar vein, there's a project that I once found I thought was pretty interesting by Michael Pollan called Food Rules, where Michael Pollan, he cites this phrase like an apple a day keeps the doctor away. And he went on this project, he went all around the world and tried to find this sort of pithy food wisdom that people spread around that changes people's behavior around food. And he made this project called Food Rules. And he lists like 80 rules, so... do it again.
Computers, right?
Apple TV, Hackatorium.
It's a feature, same about it.
Okay. Buy your snacks at the farmer's market. Eat only foods that will eventually rot. These sound great, I'm not endorsing these rules, but I'm just giving examples. Eat mostly plants, especially leaves. Eat your colors. He has sort of a story behind these. So going back 8 years, it's 2010, and the iPhone's been out for 3 years. And people are starting to notice that our behavior is changing in ways that we don't quite understand, and we feel addicted to these devices. And this interesting book was published called The Shallows, What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains by Nicholas Carr. And he noticed that, he said, suddenly it's hard for me to read a long book where it used to be very easy. What's going on here? So I started this project called Gadget Rules. Here's my defunct website with a YouTube link that's expired, unfortunately. And my goal was to mimic food rules and create these sort of little pithy sayings that might give us a culture around gadget use and make us healthier in our use of technology. Because I view this sort of rapid adoption of internet-connected smartphones as a technology change. The culture hadn't been created around it yet. So around food, we have norms and etiquette and sayings. Around technology, we're sort of eating and eating and eating as fast as we can, and like the culture hasn't really given us sort of cultural tools around our technology use yet to attenuate it or make it more sophisticated. So I don't really have time to go for more than one, but so sleep in the dark is a good one. It's just a simple saying, and I have some research about the effect on ambient light, on circadian rhythm, and I created some technology around this. But the reason I wanted to share this with you is just to encourage you to, if you can, think of some sort of very short, rhyming phrase that you think would, if people shared it with each other, help them create a healthier relationship with how they use technology. That was my project. So if you think of one, share it with me. Thanks.
That's pretty cool. I have to write that one, sleep in the dark. It makes so much sense, and yet I never fucking do that.
Yeah.
Any questions? Going once? Twice? Thrice? 3 times? Thrice? Jared.
Do you have any of your own rhymes that you'd like to share?
No, I didn't really think of any that rhyme. But one of my favorites was have a gadget hero is how it's phrased on my list. And I think this concept of a role model is very interesting, and it used to be pretty prominent, I think, in at least American culture. School children were encouraged to think about who the role model was. It seems like that concept is disappearing a little bit. If you ask at least children these days, like, who's your role model? They're like, why are you talking to me, weirdo? But I like this idea of thinking about how your role model would use technology. I think people don't do the thought experiment because you're like, oh, how would Jesus use an iPhone? It's sort of so anachronistic. But I'm just trying to encourage people, if you, Jesus as an example, or Socrates, or Kanye West. Well, we know how Kanye uses an iPhone. But to sort of, if you have a role model, maybe a moral hero, for example, even if they're from antiquity, you could try to think about how they would use technology. I think it's a fun thing to think about.
Richard Stallman reads his internet through an email which he connects to every day. That's the life I aspire to have. Any other questions? Yeah.
Do you think we're entering into a different era? Like, you just mentioned that we are, human behavior and culture is not catching up. Do you believe that we are entering a different age, not just in a digital age or whatever, but in a more of an industrial revolution kind of thing that we're not prepared for yet, and that the actions that we do right now might change the outcome of what the industrial revolution is.
Yes. So I mean, I think you can trace cultural change throughout human history by these important moments that are punctuated by intellectual technologies. So an example of how culture can change drastically is if you look at Socrates, who was a huge opponent of literacy. He was like, don't write shit down, don't read, that's whack, because then we're gonna lose our powerful memories. And memory is what's most sacred about humans. And that's just not our value anymore. Like, if someone can memorize something, you say, okay, that's a cool trick, but what have you read? We might think that's a more interesting question. So I mean, I definitely think technology sort of necessarily can change our values. So right now, going into this new age where people are maybe more hyperactive, we might think it's, we're still tempted to feel nostalgic for the sort of the intellectual age that was framed by literacy. I mean, the stuff can change, our values can shift, and we can look back in a time where everyone was very slow and monastic and focused on, no offense to the monk, focused on sort of reading and deep thinking. We might view that as just sort of a slow and inefficient era.
Cool, that's great. This was fascinating.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for volunteering at the last minute.